आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Even as we were chanting, the last verse, the verse before has duplication of the last line. Typically, that is what shows the end of the Upanishad. The last verse looks like a verse not spoken by Yamadharmaraja. It looks like it is Shruti's own Vakya. And it gives us a lot of hope. What it says is that Nachiketa, having heard Yamadharmaraja explain Atma, understood it thoroughly. And then the next line says, anybody else can also understand if one follows this Yamadharmaraja's teachings. Usually, the Shishya in the Upanishads is a very exalted person, already very knowledgeable person. We are probably struggling to get there. Therefore, we need more than one Upanishad. We have already established in our minds certain convictions which don't easily get removed. So we probably have to need to study more. But the last line gives me a lot of hope that all of us can also get there. It's just nice to know. We know that this entire Jagat, every part of the Jagat is some form of assemblage put together with a purpose for somebody's benefit. So that somebody for whose benefit this has been put together must be a sentient being. Otherwise, what is the kind of benefit we are talking about creating? And the person who is put it together also must be an intelligent being. The assemblage itself either could be a sentient being, an assemblage which itself is sentient, or could be insentient. But in either case, the understanding remains the same. It is created for the benefit of somebody by somebody who is intelligent. We also have another way of looking at it. Anything that is given to us meaning not I individually, but to humanity, but to all the beings, is Ishvara Shrishtam. Everything is given to us. Air to breathe is given to us. water to drink is given to us. The capacity to question and to analyze is given to every human being. Mountains are given to us, rivers are given to us, space is given to us, time is given to us. And therefore, there is a giver. That giver is what we call Ishvara, and this entire Srishti is Ishvara Shrishtam. When you look at it like that, then you know that even this Sharira, with all its components, is also an assemblage and is a Ishvara Shrishtam, and has therefore to be created for the benefit of somebody. It is not created for any part, any component of the assemblage. There is another type of system we also see in the Jagat, which is our own system, Manushya system, or even any other being system. Have you seen birds building nests? So creative in the way they build their nests. Also a system, Jiva system. We also create a lot of things. In the early days, we created the idea of agriculture, a produce which will sustain the physical body. And you have to irrigate that. Then you found out something. You've seen all those pictures of how there is water stored, and before the creation of a motor, you had nice systems. One of which was, I remember, you have a lever with a bucket hanging at one end. So somebody keeps climbing on that plank and the bucket goes down. He walks back, the bucket goes up and pours into the channel, which then irrigates the Manushya system. Now, of course, we create much, much more complicated things. But Manushya system is there all the time. So we have Ishvara system Jagat and Manushya system Jagat. One question that immediately comes to mind is, if this Sharira, this sentient being that I've been calling I all this time, has been created, has been put together, there must be a purpose. It is not as simply putting together a whole lot of things and saying that's an assemblage. There is a purpose. So what is the purpose of a human being? Or for that matter, any being? That you go back and try and understand from the Shastra only. There is no other place where you can find this answer. For what purpose has this human Sharira been put together? For what purpose have animal Shariras been put together? Or for that matter, even Deva Shariras been put together? They are designed and created to exhaust Punya Karma and Papa Karma Phala. And there are different kinds of Srishti, Deva Srishti, Manushya Srishti, animal Srishti, all kinds of Srishti. And each has certain additional property. You know that Deva Sharira Srishti meant to exhaust Punya Karma Phala predominantly. We don't know what kind of Sharira they have. Our artists and others have imagined all kinds of Sharira. We don't know what kind of Sharira they have. Animals have a different purpose. They exhaust predominantly Papa Karma Phala. And Manushya exhaust both Punya Karma Phala and Papa Karma Phala and also create new karma. We will talk about the Manushya Janma later. Why is Manushya Janma so important? Why is it that we we don't recognize the value of what we have been given. What happens when we recognize the value of having got a Manushya Sharira? It is not a Sharira you get very easily. Durlabham. And if we understand the purpose, as a Manushya, then there's an additional purpose given in the form of being able to make self-assessment. That everybody does, every being does. But self-assessment totally uninhibited by anything. Who am I? What am I? Can it be better? Can I be better? And having got that far, to examine further and say, is there a way I can be infinitely better? All these are qualities Manushya has. Then there is this, having created anything, it must fulfill that function for a period of time. Every creation must fulfill the purpose for which it was created, for the benefit of the person, must fulfill that purpose at least for a limited period of time. We also create, like I said, very complex things these days. A motor car is probably a good example. Multiple skills and knowledge are required to create the motor car. Typically, we being alpagnya, no one single individual has all the skills required. The fellow who creates the seats, for example, understands what is comfortable, but may have no idea how the power is transmitted from the engine to the wheels. There's a different person, different skill set, different knowledge there. That we are alpagnya. We get together and put all the skill sets together and create a motor car. But as soon as the motor car is created, if it doesn't run, which is the purpose of the motor car, then creation has no meaning. So there must be a state of sustenance. Same thing with the human body. If the human body or any other body has to fulfill a purpose, it has to have a certain minimum period of sustenance. It must do the function it is supposed to do for a limited period. That period itself varies. When we were running motor cars 60, 70 years ago, a 15, 20-year car was still a valid car. People ran cars for that long. Today, 3, 4 years is more or less when you change your car. When we started first using mobile phones, Nokias, we used it for many years. Now, Apple comes up with a new model every year and people discard their old model and buy a new model. Limited time. Human Sharira or any other Sharira also requires the time period when it must be sustained. It can vary from very small amount like a child crib death through to a person who is 100 odd years. Depending upon how much of this Punya Papa Karma Phala has to be exhausted. And that purpose is served, it falls. Laya. But that must serve its purpose and therefore must have sthiti. And that sthiti must follow certain laws. The body has to follow physiological laws, psychological laws, and many other laws. These are all niyama. Who sets these? Because this is Ishvara system, we say Ishvara is the one who sets the rules. Ishvara also sets the rules for Srishti of those things which are non-sentient. There are cosmic laws said to have been discovered by Copernicus, who drew the laws which govern the motion of all the planets. I think Copernicus was something like 16th century. But of course, these laws were known much earlier, but they were not codified into the law that the way Copernicus did. We did not create the laws. Laws were already created by Ishvara. What Copernicus did, or some of our ancestors did, like Aryabhatta and others, they only understood the law, that this is the rule that is being followed. Even in Sanskrit language, you see this. Panini has set certain very clear rules in the form of sutras, Ashtadhyayi. He didn't create the rules. Language is already there. And was following the rules. He only saw the total picture and visualized all the rules. Amazing. And obviously he didn't do it alone. There were people who before him who did a lot of work. Even then, what Panini did was incredible. And every discovery we make, it is not new knowledge. Knowledge is already there. Because everything here is Ishvara system and Ishvara is Sarvajna. And because of which the Sarvajnatvam, entire Jagat is created and all of it follows the laws laid down by Ishvara. Ishvara is not an individual. When we create something as human beings, we create certain order, Manushya system order. Anything, it should follow certain patterns, otherwise it will fail. And for that we have an intelligence, a jnanam, which is Manushya jnanam or any other jnanam. But Ishvara is not an individual who needs a brain to have a jnanam. We need buddhi. And we need to keep sharpening the buddhi. When Ishvara as the Nimitta Karana creates this, there is no individual there who is sitting in some place and using his brain to create anything. Understand the difference? We create using all that we have studied, stored knowledge, applied knowledge, and create something which looks new but is already known. Ishvara doesn't require that. That is why the word Sarvajna must be understood. And therefore, the difference between jnanam that we talk about in all our activities in the Jagat and what Shankaracharya calls Nyapti. It is not jnanam as we understand it. That Ishvara Shrishtam Jagat is created, has to be sustained, which means every component of this Jagat must do the job it is supposed to do in exactly the same fashion as dictated by the Niyama. Whether it is a sentient being which will follow certain rules or an insentient being. Now, everything in the Jagat is movement. There's nothing which is still in the Jagat. That movement also should follow the rules that have been laid down. Now we understand the word bhaya. Where is bhaya? Of what? We understand bhaya in the Jagat because all the example we saw in the previous mantra, that there is something standing with an ayuda, and therefore there is bhaya of some form of punishment. Ishvara system, there is no bhaya. Although I've seen in front of church, many places, they put a board outside, a display board. And sometimes what they write on is very scary. Intended to induce bhaya. But as far as Ishvara is concerned, there cannot be bhaya. One must therefore understand this word bhaya that has been used here as niyama. Everything follows the niyama. They follow the niyama during the period of sustenance, and then they are destroyed. Then there's no niyama, no nothing, they're destroyed. Both sentient beings and insentient beings follow the niyama given by Ishvara. In the last verse we saw by Vajramudyatam iva yatha Vajrodatam karam swaminam abhimukhi bhutam drishtva bhritya niyamena tat shasane vartante. As though in fear of the Yajamana, of the Swami, of the Lord. In that example, we saw Raja and all the people who serve under that Raja. And he also said, as long as that Raja is there, work everybody does as he or she should be doing. And if that bhaya is not there, we tend not to do it. We tend to slack. And then the next line said, Tatha idam Chandra Aditya Graha Nakshatra Tarakadi Lakshanam Jagat. The Jagat characterized by each of these planets, stars, nakshatras, etc., which also follow an order, a cosmic order. They're insentient. How do you say they follow an order? Because while Ishvara is the setter of the niyama, there are devatas. These devatas ensure that the order given in their field of operation, I told you I call them domain experts, is followed. So all the satellites have their own devatas, presiding deities. Surya, we say we know we are presiding deity in the form of Aditya. Like that, everybody has a presiding deity. Therefore, he says, Chandra Aditya Graha Nakshatra Taraka Adi Lakshanam Jagat Seshwaram. Sa Ishwaram. Ishwarena Saha. And their own Ishvara. So both the way we look at sentient component and the insentient component, they all niyamena kshanamapi abhishrantam vartate. Without a second's break, without a moment's break, follow the laws. But we know that the insentient beings also follow the law. Taittiriya Upanishad says the same thing. Bishat vatapavate, bishodeti suryah, bishatsmat agnischet indrascha, mrityurdhavati panchama iti. Same concept, same idea that these apparently insentient components of the Jagat, which is itself a total assemblage, all of them operate following a certain law. Not Bhayat. It is a law and the entire Jagat follows that law. Each one follows that. That is the period of sustenance. And in the way we look at these things, that is a limited period. When the sustenance is over, then Laya. The cycle stops over again. And every day this is happening to us. And every kalpa it is happening to the entire Jagat. So one kalpa of huge Jagat assembled together, individual components of that sustained for short periods, coming again, cycle within cycle within cycle within cycle. But all of them only cycle. So if you look at these sustenance of the Jagat, how is that sustained? How are the laws followed? Introducing this verse, Bhashyakara says, Katham tad bhayat.
Katham tad bhayat.
Jagat vartate iti.
Jagat vartate iti.
Aha.
Aha.
The bhaya, we've said, not this thing to be understood, bhaya as niyati. How do these apparently insentient things like the planets and the stars and the sun and the moon and the air and so on, how do they sustain? How they sustain? How do they follow the law? What happens should they fail to follow the law even for a moment? That would be disaster. How is it for Katham Tat Bhayat? What we refer to as Bhaya. How do they follow this niyama? Jagat Vartate. Jagat itself is what? That which is constantly moving is Jagat. By definition, Jagat means that which is moving. And that movement has to be a regulated movement. There's nothing random about that. Jagat vartate katham pravartate iti aha. And therefore introducing this, like I said, Jagat Bhashyakara says this, and then the mantra itself says, Bhayatasya
Bhayatasya
Agnistapati
Agnistapati
Bhayatapati Suryaha
भयात् तपति सूर्यः
भयात् इन्द्रश्च वायुश्च
भयात् इन्द्रश्च वायुश्च
मृत्युर्धावति पंचमः
मृत्युर्धावति पञ्चमः
because of this niyama which is set up, referred to as bhayat asya bhayat, kasya bhayat, of Brahman, of the Niyata, the one who is the Niyamakara, Jagat Karanasya, Tasya Niyamat, Tasya Bhayat, Tasya Niyamat, Agnihi Tapati. Agni maintains his heat because of the order. Sugar maintains its sweetness because of the order. Bhayat tapati Surya. Surya sustains the entire Jagat by its heat and light because of the order. You can always argue that no, this reaction, fusion reactions take place, the sun, therefore heat comes. Who or what rule dictated this fusion? No, we've discovered that we know what happens when an electron is shot out of this, it releases energy. All that is true. But you only have discovered the law. You didn't create the law. Who created the law? That intelligence, what we were calling Jnapti. And our Shastra uses words like Bhayat tapati Surya. Understand that the sun which sustains all life forms in this Jagat that we know, and all the other planets and satellites and everything, which all assist in the process, because if they go berserk, they can know life. So this is like not only Surya but everything else. Bhayat Indrascha, all the devatas, and Vayuscha. Vayu is movement of air. Air is never still. Although sometimes in summer, in a place like Delhi, you might feel that there's absolute stillness, but there's no stillness. And this air, as long as it's outside the Sharira, we call it air. Moment it goes into the nostril, we call it prana. And it has to continue to go in, come out, go in, come out. If it doesn't follow these laws, life would not be possible. Bhayat Indrascha Vayuscha. Lord Yama is saying, listen, even I follow the same laws. I also have laws. It looks like I don't have laws. It looks like I am not following a sequence. I'm not picking up the oldest person first, and then the next, and then the next. Mrityu jumps around. One in Australia who is only 20 years old. One in Iceland which is 70 years old. One in Tamil Nadu which is 60 years old. There is a sequence to that which is not visible to us. That Mrityu is not going in a linear fashion and picking up jiva. It picks up jivas as they've exhausted their prarabdha karma. So Mrityu dhavati, jumps around. It doesn't follow a orderly walking or even running. Mrityur dhavati panchamaha. Therefore, because of the sphere of Brahman, because of the niyama of Brahman, fire burns, sun shines, creates heat and light. Because of Indra and Vayu, Indra is the lord of apaha, waters. Vayu is the lord of Vayu. They function. And the lord of death, Lord Yama himself, which is the fifth in the sequence, that's all. Panchama only means fifth in the sequence. What does it say? Agnihi, Suryaha, Indraha, Vayuhu, and Mrityu, fifth. It's only that Panchami is only for that. There is no other meaning to the Panchami. That moves about, jumps around out of because of this niyama which it follows. Earlier we said, in the presence of that Brahman, that all these follow the function they're supposed to follow in the way they're supposed to follow. That's why that example is given. When the cat is away, mouse are at play. Everybody who's attended any office knows this. Boss is not there, people slack. There is congregation at the water hole or coffee or wherever. So you see, when in the presence of this Brahman, everything happens. Things do not fall apart. They're not very great deal of. In fact, this Nyaya, in Sanskrit, there are very beautiful Nyayas. If you open the dictionary and look under Nyaya, you'll probably find a whole lot of Nyaya. And one such is called Rajabhritya Nyaya. That is this Nyaya. When the Raja is there, his presence is there, all the people who serve the Raja do what they're supposed to do. Rajabhritya Nyaya. Meaning anybody in authority who has the powers to distribute punishment, therefore things work. When the Niyanta is there, everybody follows through their work and completes it as it should be done. But if you look at Bhaya as duty, in fact, in our thinking, we always talk of duty. I have to join duty. I have to go for my duty. We use the word duty. Instead of Bhaya, you can use duty. That's also equally good. So Bhashyakara will read now. Bhayat,
Bhayat,
Bhitya,
Bhitya,
Asya Parameshwarasya,
Asya Parameshwarasya,
Agnihi Tapati,
Agnihi Tapati,
Parameshwarasya Bhayat, Agnihi Tapati. That is the sentence. Agnihi Tapati, Parameshwarasya Bhayat. Because of the Bhaya, in this case, the order of Parameshwara, of Brahman, Agnihi burns. It's been understood correctly. Agnihi burns because it is the nature of Agni. Light and heat are the nature of Agni. But what gave Agni these qualities? No, it is natural. Why can't I have a cold Agni? Not possible. There is a certain rule, a niyama, which Agni also follows. Therefore, he says, bhayat, bhitya means bhaya only, asya parmeshwarasya bhayat agnihi tapati. Scientists cannot discover a cold Agni. If you discover something like that, it will not be called Agni. It will become something else. Bhayat tapati surya.
भयात् तपति सूर्यः.
Same thing about Surya. One you said Agni, other is Surya. Same also. Surya sustains life. Can you imagine what was the life like when humans did not discover fire? Before fire was discovered, life was there. But been quite a mess. Somewhere I read that somebody must have accidentally dropped, even after they discovered fire, a piece of meat they were eating like animals into the fire. And they were so desperate, they picked it up and ate it and found it much better. That's how they started cooking. But Agnihi tapati because of the niyama, Surya tapati because of the niyama, and because Surya tapati, entire jivatvam is possible. Bhayat indrascha vayuscha.
भयात् इन्द्रश्च वायुश्च
मृत्युर्धावति पंचमः.
मृत्युर्धावति पंचमः.
इंद्रः च वायुः च bhayat dhavat. Bhayat functions. The function word is not there. Bhayat indrascha vayuscha. They also operate, they also function because of the same factor of niyati. Mrityu dhavati panchamaha. The fifth element in this list also follows this law that it's supposed to follow. Nahi ishvaranam
नहि ईश्वराणां
लोकपालानां
लोकपालानां
samathanam
समर्थानां
satam niyanta chet
सतां नियन्ता चेत्
vajrodyata karavat
वज्रोद्यतकरवत्
na syat
न स्यात्
swami bhayabhitanam iva
स्वामि
स्वामी भयभीतानामिव
भृत्यानाम नियता प्रवृत्तिहि उपपद्यते.
वृद्ध्यानां
वृत्यानां
नियता
नियता
प्रवृत्तिः उपपद्यते.
प्रवृत्तिरुपपद्यते.
Nahi Ishwaranam Lokapalanam, the one who is the protector, directly and through the Devatas. We know the role of the Devata been created is to take on specific functions and do what is to be done. Make sure that every law in their field is followed. Suppose it was not like that. Nahi Ishwaranam, Lokapalanam, Samarthanam. One is efficient. Everything is perfectly aligned. There is no clash. There is no individual component saying, I don't like what I'm doing, I want to do something else. Every component works as it should work. We know in the human sharira there are so many components. When one component does not do what it's supposed to do, we have all kinds of problems. Any one component. If the heart doesn't pump as it's supposed to pump, if the muscles don't function as they should function, if the nerves don't act as communication channels, there are all kinds of problems. There is a condition called shingles. I don't know how many of you ever had this problem. Apparently, what happens is somebody who's had a chicken pox or something in childhood, it is never completely resolved. It gets hidden somewhere in the sharira, waiting for a suitable moment when that body is vulnerable. What happens? Typically, you go through a great loss. Body's immune systems are underperforming. Then this little thing wakes up and starts eating the shield of the nerve. The nerve is now exposed. So all along where the nerve is running, whether in the face or body, wherever, you can see the effect. But more importantly, what happens is, this nerve sends a mithya signal to the brain. This is how the doctor explained the whole thing. It's very interesting. So you get mithya pain. The pain you get from shingles is not real pain. It is a false information being sent by the nerve to the buddhi. And therefore, all the signals that you will get, rest of the sharira, if you really had pain, are also then spread. So everything has a function to perform. If they don't perform their function, something or the other goes wrong. Nahi Ishwaranam, Lokapalanam, Samarthanam, their efficiency is affected, their function is affected. Satam Niyanta Chet, if the Niyanta is not there, Nahi Ishwaranam, etc., Niyanta Chet, if the Niyanta is not there, what happens? Not only not there, Bhadrote Karavat, as though standing with a weapon, as though standing on top of them saying, you better do your job. If that is not there, if that kind of supervision of the person in authority, either directly or through the devatas, is not there, nasyat, then what happens? Swami bhaya bhitanam eva Bhrutyanam niyata pravrittihi upapadyate. They will not operate, all the parts will operate to say the least, they will slack in their duty if the niyata is not there. So who sustains it? It's the same niyata who created it. Same niyata who created the sharira also sustains it. Make sure that every part functions as it functions. You know, I said there are these various devatas. And many times we have a little problem in the sharira or in the mind, we go to one of these devatas and do a special prayer. In Tirunelveli, there is one temple, Nellayappan temple. And in that temple is one, what say what Rogeshwara, Roganam Ishvara. It said that if you pray to that Ishvara, the body maintains its condition. Special deity for that. If your eyes are giving trouble, pray to Aditya. Like that, for everything there is a Devata. So one could seek help from the Devata for maintaining some part of the system. Or one could go directly to Ishvara, the formless, Nirguna, or even Saguna, doesn't matter. Because any prayer that we say to any of the Devatas, Bhagavan says very clearly, it all comes to me. And then I distribute the phala through them. So who you pray to, then it's sustained. That's why it said, no, the more Ishvara you have in your life, more one is able to see the presence of Ishvara in everything, the more the chances that all the niyati will be followed. The niyati for the mind, the niyati for the body. There is clearly an order in all of these things. Even what looks like apparent disorder, when you take a step back and look at the larger picture, it is part of the same niyati. That is why it's so important that we bring more and more and more Ishvara into our lives. If we don't bring Ishvara into our life, even the Devatas can't help. No, I don't believe in an Ishvara. But I know there's one deity which is supposed to, there are many deities. There's one, I've heard, I don't remember where it is, one Visa Ganapati. Have you heard of that? If you are wanting to give visa to go to some other place, you go and pray to the Ganapati. Now I think he must be getting a lot of custom because visa is becoming more and more difficult.
Swami, it's in Hyderabad.
Wherever it is.
And there's Visa Balaji.
Like that.
Chilipur.
Every deity for
There's
every function is there. But if Ishvara is not there in your life, because deities draw their power only from Ishvara. So we go pray to the deities, the prayer goes to Ishvara, and Ishvara in turn gives us the phala. And if we don't have Ishvara in your life, we don't understand Ishvara, if you're not able to see Ishvara in everything, then even the deities will have difficulty supporting you. Swamiji used to talk a lot about Ishvara, particularly towards the last, I think, 10, 15, 20 years. So important to understand Ishvara. That's why that one prayer in one mantra in one shloka in Bhagavad Gita is so important. That we understand Ishvara. See Ishvara in everything. And in everybody. With Shraddha. It's very easy to say, I don't believe in Ishvara. But that's a thoughtless statement. One way to do some vichara, some thinking about it, you will see that such a statement has no basis. The more one brings Ishvara, a favorite word, Ishvarize your life. I don't know how many of you have known, there used to be a process called sanctuarization. It is a process used on fabrics, which is supposed to give it, I think, an ability to hold the non-creasing property longer. So they use a sanforized cloth. Ishvara is the life like that. The more Ishvara I have in my life, the more I can hope to make sure that my life is in order. There are no disturbances. Devatas will support me. And eventually, I am in a position to gear myself for gaining this moksha jnana. Ultimately, that's the only purpose. Moksha jnana is the only purpose. Although I said Manushya Janma has been given like any other Janma to exhaust Punya Karma and Papa Karma Phala. But there's also the additional ability to question and to understand that there is much more than that. Understand the idea of moksha. Understand the idea of Ishvara. Bhagavan says, if you remember, Manushyanam sahasreshu kashid yatati siddhaye. To even understand this, many people, of the many thousands, a few only make an attempt to understand. Yatatam api siddhanam kashid mam veti tatvatah. Very few understand the nature of Ishvara. If you understand the nature of Ishvara, moksha. So in this verse, Bhagavan talks about, Shastra talks about how sustenance is maintained both in sentient things and in insentient things in the Jagat. Having explained all this, then Yamadharma Raja will move on to say much more. This is in fact towards this, we are now coming towards the end of this, where there is Upasamhara, where we are trying to understand what has been said already, summing up those things, and what will be the result of this, what can we get. That's why I said the last verse, last mantra, you can read that again and again. Very hopeful mantra. We will see the next mantra in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om
ధన్యవాదాలు స్వామి.
नमस्ते नमस्ते
Om
स्वामी
Swamiji.
नमस्ते
Om
थैंक यू स्वामी जी
ధన్యవాదాः నమస్కారాः
Om Swamiji.
Om